At 40, my husband Lucian died. He died in my arms. Before he breathed his last, he looked at my face, his eyes filled with the familiar disgust and relief. Yon Jixia, I finally don't have to look at that face of yours anymore. These were his last words to me. At that moment, I had just finished testing his medicine. My hands covered in blisters from the scalding heat, yet my heart ached more than those burns. We had been married for 20 years. I managed the household for him, served his parents dutifully, raised our children. I'd never wronged him in any way. Yet in those 20 years, he never once showed me a kind expression. The reason was nothing else. Only because of this face of mine. From my temple to my left cheek runs a hideous scar, left by a fire 20 years ago. In that blaze, while saving him, I was struck by a burning beam. My once peerless beauty was destroyed forever. The Liu family, out of gratitude and obligation, asked for my hand in marriage. Liu Xian, under pressure from his family, reluctantly accepted. On our wedding night, he lifted my veil. Seeing the scar on my face, a flash of horror crossed his eyes, quickly turning into thick, undisguised disgust. He sat motionless the entire night. At dawn, he said to me, "Yunjixia, I Liu Xian, will never touch you in this lifetime." He kept his word. For 20 years, we were husband and wife in name only. He stayed in the study, I in the main courtyard, treating each other with icy courtesy. I thought that if I was good enough, I could eventually warm his heart. But I was wrong. After Lucian was buried, the butler handed me a letter, his last will. On that paper was his all too familiar slender gold script, every word cutting like a knife. "Yun Jixia, marrying you was the greatest shame of my life. Back then, in that fire, if you hadn't meddled and burst through that door, I would have escaped with Liu Ying long ago. How could I have ended up owing you such an enormous debt, forced to marry a disfigured, ugly woman? For 20 years, every time I saw your face, I felt disgusted. Did you think I didn't know about all your tricks to please me? The meals you cooked, the clothes you sewed, the medicine you brewed, they all reeked of the rotting stench from that ugly face of yours, making me want to vomit. The only one I truly loved in this life was Liu Ying alone. I have left all my properties, lands, and vast fortune to her. Since you've held the title of Madame Liu for 20 years, you should be satisfied. This grand Liu manor, I'll leave it for you to grow old and consider it my final charity. Also, after my death, bury my ashes together with Liu Ying. Only by sharing a grave with her can I rest in peace." The letter slipped from my trembling hands. Liu Ying, his white moonlight, his cousin, and the woman he had shielded beneath him in that fire. I had always thought she had married far away long ago, no longer connected to us. Turns out, they had never stopped. A vast fortune given to his white moonlight, leaving me an empty mansion and a humiliating last will. What a Liu Xian, what a man of undying devotion. Me son Liu Wenbai and daughter Liu Wengshuan knelt before me, crying and pleading for their father. Mother, father just made a momentary lapse in judgment. Mother, please don't blame father. He has been suffering inside. I looked at them and suddenly found it utterly laughable. The children I had painstakingly raised had long been molded by their father into puppets, who only knew blind filial piety. In their hearts, their father's suffering mattered far more than my 20 years of devotion. My heart, at that moment, completely died. I held Lucian's urn of ashes and climbed, step by step, to the tallest star, picking tower in the city. The bitter wind howled, making my sleeves flutter wildly, and dried my last tear. "Lucian, didn't you want to be buried together with Liu Ying?" I sneered at the urn in my arms. "I refuse to grant your wish." I raised my hand and scattered all his ashes into the sky. Just drift as a wandering ghost like this, never find peace for all eternity. Behind me came the terrified screams of my children. I didn't look back, leaped off, and plunged from the tall building. My body plummeted rapidly, the howling wind rushing past my ears. I thought I would be smashed to pieces, but unexpectedly, my vision was suddenly engulfed by a blaze of fire. The thick smoke choked me into violent coughing, the scorching air burning my skin. I suddenly opened my eyes and found myself in the middle of a sea of fire. The surroundings were familiar carved window lattices, a collapsed curio shelf. This was the Liu family's library, the fire from 20 years ago that changed my entire life. Not far away, a familiar figure was desperately shielding a delicate woman in his arms, his legs pinned under a broken beam, unable to move. It was the young Lu Xian and Liu Ying. Cough, cough. Who is out there? Someone come quickly. Help! Lu Xian's voice was full of panic. I recognized that door in my past life. I had rammed open this fire, warped door like a madwoman, allowing them to escape, while I was struck by another falling beam, disfiguring me and ruining my entire life. Liu Ying cried pitifully in his arms like a pear blossom bathed in rain. Cousin, are we going to die here? I am so scared. Don't be afraid, Yinger, I am here. Lu Xian comforted her softly, then shouted toward the door. Yun Jixia, is that you? I know you are out there. Break down the door. I am begging you. I stood in the middle of the fire, watching them coldly through the flickering flames. In my past life, I had loved Lu Xian to the point of madness. For him, I threw myself into danger without hesitation, willing to give my life. What I got in return was 20 years of cold treatment and humiliation before my death. Living a second life, why should I still save them? I slowly curved the corners of my lips, revealing a cold smile. You want me to save you, dream on. I turned around and ran without hesitation toward the safe exit in my memory. There was a small window there, narrow, but enough for me to squeeze through alone. Behind me, Lu Xian's shouts became increasingly shrill and desperate. Yun Jixia, you vicious woman, how dare you not save me? Yun Jixia, come back, as long as you save me. I'll marry you right away. Marry me. What a huge joke. I couldn't be bothered to listen to his wailing anymore. I nimbly climbed out the small window and breathed in the fresh air outside. Behind me, the fire grew fiercer and fiercer. With a loud boom, the roof of the library collapsed completely. The screams of Lu Xian and Liu Ying stopped abruptly. The world was finally quiet. I leaned against the wall, gasping for breath. My face was blackened by the thick smoke, but I knew this time it was unscathed. Soon, servants and guards rushed over with buckets, but it was too late. After the fire was put out, people dug out 2 charred corpses from the ruins. The Liu family was thrown into total chaos. My father, the current Grand Tutor Yun Qingyuan, rushed over with his men. Seeing that I was safe and sound, just a bit disheveled, he let out a long sigh of relief and pulled me into his arms. Shaxia, as long as you are okay, you scared Daddy to death. I buried my head in my father's warm embrace, and 20 years of grievances finally burst forth in tears. In my past life, for the sake of Lu Xian, I had a huge fight with my father who urged me to break off the engagement, breaking his heart completely. In this life, I would never be that foolish again. Dad, I am fine. The Liu family patriarch looked at the 2 charred corpses with a livid face, then looked at me and harshly interrogated. Yun Jixia, when the fire broke out, you were clearly near the library. Why didn't you help? You just watched Xian and Miss Liu burn to death. I raised my tear-filled eyes, my face full of innocence and fear. Uncle Liu, what are you saying? The fire was so huge, with thick smoke billowing everywhere. I am just a weak woman who can't even truss a chicken. How could I possibly rush in? I was so scared, my legs went weak. It was already lucky I could escape myself. How could I have cared about others? These words of mine were perfectly reasonable. No one could find any fault with them. A delicate young lady from a noble household scared out of her wits in front of a fire, only thinking of saving herself. What could be more normal? Were they going to demand that I rush in to save people like a man? The Liu family patriarch was left speechless by my retort, and could only glare at me with hatred. Me father let out a cold snort and shielded me behind him. Brother Liu, this was a natural disaster, beyond human control. That my daughter narrowly escaped with her life was already heaven's mercy. Instead of comforting her, you come here to interrogate her. What kind of reasoning is this? Patriarch Liu was at a loss for words. After all, Liu Xian and Liu Ying, an unmarried man and woman alone together in the library late at night, was already improper. Now that both had perished in the fire, if word got out, it would only tarnish the Liu family's reputation. They could only swallow their broken teeth with blood and hastily classify this matter as an accident. As for me, that Yun Jixia who stood by and watched them die. In everyone's eyes, I was merely a pitiful soul who had been scared out of her wits. Upon returning to the Grand Tutor's residence, the first thing I did was bathe and change my clothes, then carefully examine my face in the mirror. A smooth forehead, delicate eyebrows, a pair of bright and lively almond eyes, a pert nose, and sharply defined lips. How wonderful, it is still here. This face once hailed as the capital's foremost beauty. In this lifetime, I will make it radiate the most dazzling brilliance. Liu Xian's death stirred up quite a commotion in the capital, but soon it was replaced by new gossip. People simply assumed the Liu family's young master and his cousin had behaved improperly and received divine retribution. As for me, I began planning my reborn life. The first step was to shed the identity of Liu Xian's fiancé. In my previous life, I was imprisoned by this identity for half my life. In this life, I will never let it become my shackles again. I took the initiative to suggest to Father that I wanted to go to our family's villa in Jiangnan to recuperate for a while, under the pretense of being frightened by the fire and needing a change of scenery to calm my nerves. Father naturally agreed. Before leaving, I made a special trip to the Liu residence to pay respects to my be-widow husband. At the morning hall, Madame Liu was crying her heart out. When she saw me, it was like she had found a lifeline, and she grabbed my hand. Jixia, you are such a good child. Xian. He wasn't blessed with good fortune. Don't worry, your engagement with Xian still stands. After the mourning period, you'll marry into our family, and the Liu family will treat you well. I sneered coldly in my heart. Treat me well, by making me remain a living widow for Liu Xian my whole life, draining away my youth, and then squeezing out every last bit of my value. I withdrew my hand, gave a curtsy, my tone carrying just the right amount of grief and resolve. Auntie, please restrain your grief. It is just... Brother Xian is already gone, and Jixia, with my humble looks, dare not continue occupying the title of young madam of the Liu family. This marriage, let's just forget about it. How can that be? Madame Liu became anxious. The power of the Grand Tutor's residence was the high branch that the Liu family, a merchant household, desperately wanted to climb no matter what. Even with Liu Xian dead, they still wanted to tie me, the Grand Tutor's daughter, firmly to the Liu family's ship. Jixia, I know you are hurting inside, but you and Xian have had a bond since childhood. You can't, Auntie, I interrupted her, my voice soft, yet every word clear. No matter how deep the bond, it can't overcome the separation between life and death. Brother Xian and I were fated to meet, but not to be together. Some things can't be forced. With that said, I ignored her attempts to make me stay and turned to leave. News of the broken engagement quickly spread throughout the capital. Some said I was heartless, rushing to cut ties before my fiancé's body was even cold. Others said I was smart, cutting my losses in time to avoid becoming a widow at such a young age. I didn't care about these rumors and gossip. I knew this was only the first step of my plan. The real battlefield was in Jiangnan. Jiangnan, land of fish and rice, prosperous and flourishing. My family's villa was situated by Lake Taihu, just outside Suzhou City. But the purpose of this trip wasn't for sightseeing. I remembered that in my previous life, most of Lucian's vast fortune came from the salt licenses and canal transport business in Jiangnan. And the reason he could gain a foothold in these two lucrative industries was all thanks to a mysterious figure called Boss Shen. Lucian had sighed more than once in front of me, saying this Boss Shen had connections reaching the heavens, could navigate both the underworld and legitimate circles, and was Jiangnan's true underground emperor. He owed everything he had today to a chance encounter back then that caught Boss Shen's eye. In this life, Lucian was dead. This Boss Shen naturally became someone without a partner. What I needed to do was intercept Lucian's opportunity and become Boss Shen's new partner. It is difficult, nearly impossible. As a sheltered lady of a noble house, how could I possibly get in touch with someone like that? But I have memories from my past life. I remember, Lucian once said that his first meeting with Boss Shen was at Suzhou's biggest money pit, Xiaohunlu. At that time, Lucian was hosting a wealthy merchant at Xiaohunlu to discuss a silk deal. During the banquet, the merchant let his tongue slip after drinking and offended an unremarkable man at the neighboring table. That man flew into a rage on the spot, wanting to break one of the merchant's legs. To save the deal, Lucian braced himself and stepped forward to mediate, spending a fortune and downing 3 cups as self-punishment before finally settling the matter. Only later did he learn that the unremarkable man was Boss Shen. Boss Shen admired his guts and sincerity, so he gave him a chance and let him into the salt trading game. Xiaohunlu, a place where all sorts mingle together, is not somewhere a proper lady like me should go. But I must go. I changed into a set of sharp men's clothing, tied up my long hair, applied a special solution to turn my skin sallow, and drew 2 thick eyebrows between my brows, making me look just like a handsome young lad. Late at night, I stepped into Xiaohunlu with 2 guards disguised as servant boys. Inside, it was a scene of drunken extravagance, with sensual music constantly filling my ears. Suppressing my discomfort, I followed the directions Lucian had described in my past life and found that private room by the window. Inside the private room, sure enough, sat a man. He wore coarse hemp clothes, had an unremarkable appearance, and blended into the crowd without standing out. But he occupied the best seat all by himself, with only a pot of plain tea before him, calmly watching the singing and dancing downstairs, exuding an aura that was completely out of place with the surroundings. I was certain he was Boss Shen. I didn't wait for a hero saves the beauty opportunity like Lucian did, because I knew such opportunities were full of uncertainty. I walked straight over and sat down across from him. Boss Shen raised his eyelids and gave me an indifferent glance, his eyes showing not a ripple of emotion. "Young master, something you need?" I poured myself a cup of tea and got straight to the point. "Boss Shen, I want to do a deal with you." A hint of surprise flashed in his eyes, but he quickly regained his composure. "Oh, you know who I am. In all of Jiangnan at this hour, in this spot, drinking tea so calm and composed. Besides the legendary Boss Shen, I can't think of a second person." I looked him straight in the eyes, neither humble nor arrogant. He smiled, an extremely faint smile tinged with scrutiny. "Interesting. But, young friend, I never discuss business with strangers." "Aren't we acquainted now?" I said. "My name is Yunsha from the capital." "From the capital." He rubbed his teacup. "A young master from the capital, coming all the way to my little place here. What kind of business do you want to do?" "Salt permits." I softly uttered the 2 words. His hand holding the tea paused slightly, and his gaze instantly turned sharp, like an unsheathed blade. "Young man, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't just say whatever you want. Salt permits are a government monopoly. Private trading is punishable by beheading. Boss Shen is too modest. I smiled faintly. Everyone knows that half of Jiangnan's salt permits are in your hands. I am not here to trade salt permits. I want to partner with you and grow this business together. Grow it? He sounded like he'd just heard a joke. My business is already big enough. Why would I partner with a greenhorn like you? Because I can bring you what you need most. Oh, and what is that? A backer. I said, word by word, a backer powerful enough to let you expand your business to the capital, to all of Great Zhou. Boss Shen fell silent. He stared at me, as if trying to see right through me. I met his gaze calmly. I knew my words had struck his weak spot. No matter how wealthy salt merchants were, they were still merchants. In a society with the rigid hierarchy of scholars, farmers, artisans, merchants, they held a lowly status and could be slaughtered like fat sheep by officials at any time. For Boss Shen to have reached his current position, he surely understood the stakes. He needed a powerful political backer to protect his wealth and further expand his commercial empire. And I, the Grand Tutor's daughter, the future empress, was his best choice. Of course, I couldn't reveal my true identity to him right now. After a long while, he finally spoke slowly. What makes you qualified? Just because my surname is Yun. I lifted my teacup and took a gentle sip. The capital, the Yun family. I didn't say my father was the Grand Tutor, only mentioned the Yun family. This was a perfectly calibrated vagueness. It revealed my extraordinary background while leaving enough room for imagination, letting him investigate and guess on his own. Sometimes saying too much actually invites suspicion. A sharp glint flashed in Boss Shen's eyes. He obviously knew what the Yun family of the capital meant. All right. He finally nodded. We can discuss business, but I need to see your sincerity. My sincerity is this. I pulled out a sheet of paper from my chest and pushed it in front of him. On it was drawn a completely new salt drying method. It was the beach evaporation method I had improved based on memories from the future. Compared to the current time, consuming and labor, intensive boiling method, this new approach could greatly increase salt production efficiency and reduce costs. This was the first bargaining chip I threw out, and also the key to my confidence in winning him over. Boss Shen picked up the diagram, and after just one glance, his expression changed. He was an expert in this field and naturally understood the value of this diagram. He suddenly looked up, his eyes filled with shock and disbelief. This, you drew this? Indeed. I nodded calmly. This is just a greeting gift for Boss Shen. If we cooperate, I can provide more things like this. For example, how to improve canal transport vessels and increase cargo capacity, how to establish a more efficient accounting system and plug corruption loopholes. Every single thing I mentioned hit precisely on a merchant's pain points. Boss Shen's breathing became somewhat rapid. He looked at me as if looking at a huge treasure. Young Master Yun. He even changed his form of address. Please forgive this Shen for failing to recognize greatness just now. This deal, I'll take it. I smiled. I knew it. I had succeeded. Intercepting Lu Xian's opportunity was only the first step. Next, I would use Boss Shen's financial resources and connections to build my own commercial empire. I was no longer that resentful woman of the inner chambers who could only survive by depending on men. In this life, I would be my own queen. The cooperation with Boss Shen went exceptionally smoothly. Under the identity of young Master Yun, I became his most mysterious and most important partner. I provided business concepts and technology that transcended this era, while he was responsible for putting these ideas into practice. We improved the salt drying method, tripling salt production in just half a year while cutting costs by half. We monopolized the salt market in Jingyan, and our profits snowballed larger and larger. We then turned our sights to canal transport. I designed a new type of Fuchuan ship with greater cargo capacity, faster speed, and stronger resistance to wind and waves. Our fleet soon replaced the official ships and became the dominant force on the canals. Silk, tea, porcelain. We had a hand in any business that could make money. My wealth was accumulating at a terrifying speed. During this period, my father, through my guidance, investigated and prosecuted several corrupt officials from the Jiangnan Salt Transport Office. Not only did he recover a huge amount of tax money for the national treasury, but he also cleared the obstacles for my and Boss Shen's business. His reputation in court grew ever higher, earning deep trust from the emperor. Everything was proceeding in an orderly manner, according to my plan. And I had transformed from a naive young girl into a business queen who strategized from behind the scenes. Though in public, I was still that grand tutor's daughter recuperating in Jiangnan, gentle, demure, and delicate. This double life made me feel incredibly thrilled and satisfied. A year later, I returned to the capital. By now, I was no longer the young Jixia from a year ago who had nothing but her family background. The wealth I controlled was enough to make all the nobles in the capital take notice. Of course, all of this was a secret. After returning to the capital, the first thing I did was go visit Liu Ying. Oh, wait, I should call her Madame Liu now. After Lu Xian's death, the Liu family, in order to protect their family fortune and to appease their deeply intertwined business relations with the Liu family, actually had Lu Xian's younger brother, Lu Xian, marry Liu Ying. They really put on an absurd show of when the elder brother dies, the younger takes his place. I met her in the garden of the Liu residence. She wore a gorgeous dress adorned with pearls and jade, but there was a lingering trace of gloom between her brows. When she saw me, she was momentarily stunned, then forced out a stiff smile. "Little sister Jixia, you are back, Sister Liu." I smiled slightly, my gaze sweeping over her. "It has been a while, and you've become even more prosperous, sister." My words were like a needle, piercing right into her. Her face paled slightly, and she forced a smile. "You jest, little sister. I merely got married, that is all." "Indeed, married to Brother Xian's own younger brother." I sighed with feigned innocence. "Come to think of it, Sister really does have quite a connection with the Liu family. I wonder, in the quiet of the night, when facing your current husband, do you ever mistake him for Brother Xian?" "You?" Liu Ying's face instantly flushed crimson. Her eyes filled with shame, fury, and humiliation. This was precisely the most secret wound in her heart. Marrying her brother. In-law was a scandal in anyone's eyes. She might appear glamorous now, but in reality, she was walking on thin ice in the Liu family, constantly subjected to gossip everywhere. I wanted to tear open her scars and make her wish she were dead. "What nonsense are you spouting?" she snapped harshly. "Am I spouting nonsense?" I tilted my head, smiling innocently and harmlessly. "Back then in the library, Brother Xian was protecting you when he... such deep love and loyalty. You must have been deeply moved, sister." "Shut up." Liu Ying was like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, her voice turning shrill. That fire was all your fault. If you had broken down the door sooner, cousin wouldn't have died." She had finally spoken her true feelings. This was exactly what I had been waiting for. Oh, the smile on my face gradually turned cold. Blame me, a weak woman, for not rushing into the fire to save you. Sister Liu, have you forgotten that, at the time, there were only 2 people in the library? You and Brother Xian, a man and a woman alone, sharing a room together. Do I need to remind you what you were doing? Liu Ying's lips trembled, unable to speak. "If you don't want others to know, don't do it yourself." I pressed on step by step, my voice as cold as ice. "You too did something shameful, knocked over the candles, and caused the disaster. Yet you turn around and blame me, an innocent bystander, for not risking my life to save you. Where in the world is there such logic? You are spouting nonsense. Whether I am spouting nonsense, you know best in your heart." I looked at her coldly. Liu Ying, you are enjoying the Liu family's wealth, pining for my former fiancé in your heart, yet you married his younger brother. How long do you think Lucian will tolerate you? How long will the Liu family tolerate you? Do you think what you have now really belongs to you? It is nothing but flowers in a mirror, and the moon and water. It will shatter at the slightest touch. Every word of mine was like a sharp sword piercing precisely into her heart. Liu Ying's face turned from red to white, from white to pale, and finally, she trembled all over, unable to stand steady, and collapsed onto the ground. I looked down at her from above, without a trace of sympathy in my eyes. In my past life, it was this woman who enjoyed my husband's love and wealth, shamelessly being his mistress for 20 years. In this life, I will make her taste what it feels like to fall from the clouds into the mud. Having crushed Liu Ying's psychological defenses, next up was the Liu family, the vast fortune Liu Xian left to Liu Ying in my past life. In this life, because of his early death, most of it was still in the Liu family's hands. What I needed to do was pull the rug out from under them and make the Liu family go completely bankrupt. This wasn't difficult for me, because I had Boss Shen as my trump card. The Liu family's main business was silk and tea, and Boss Shen and I had already quietly taken over most of the Jiangnan market through better quality goods and lower prices. My return to the capital was to complete the final encirclement. I had Boss Shen dump large quantities of silk and tea into the capital at extremely low prices. In no time, market prices were driven down drastically by us. The Liu family's shops were deserted, goods piled up like mountains in their warehouses, completely unsellable. The Liu family patriarch, my so-called Uncle Liu, was anxious like an ant on a hot pan. He ran around everywhere, trying to stabilize prices, only to find it was completely futile. An invisible hand was manipulating the entire market. The capital chain broke very quickly. To keep the family running, the Liu family had no choice but to start selling off their farmland and shops. As for me, I had Boss Shen's men use different identities to acquire these farmland and shops at the lowest prices. One by one, in just 3 short months, the Liu family went from being a wealthy merchant clan dominating the region to a debt-ridden empty shell. The Liu clan leader's hair turned white overnight. He couldn't figure out who on earth was targeting the Liu family from behind the scenes. Until one day, I arranged to meet him under the identity of Yun Sha. The meeting place was the premium room at Wangjiang Tower, the largest restaurant in the capital. This place had once been the Liu family's property. When the Liu clan leader saw the composed Yang gentleman sitting in the seat of honor, he froze. "Yang Master Yun, what do you need from me?" He kept his posture very low. The current Yang Master Yun was a mysterious big shot that everyone in the capital's business circles knew about. I didn't answer him, but leisurely took a sip of tea, then raised my eyes and said to the maidservant beside me, "Take off the veil." The maidservant, who had been standing quietly behind me, slowly removed the veiled hat from her face. What was revealed was my devastatingly beautiful face. The Liu clan leader was struck as if by lightning, his whole body frozen in place. He stared wide-eyed, pointing at me, then at that young Master Yun, his lips trembling, unable to utter a single word. "Uncle Liu, hope you've been well." I spoke with a smile, my voice crisp and pleasant. Yun Jixia?" He finally squeezed out a few words, his voice filled with disbelieving horror. "Young Master Yun, is it you?" "That is right." I nodded, my smile growing even more radiant. "Quite a surprise, isn't it?" "Why?" He slumped into his chair, utterly distraught, muttering to himself. "Our Liu family? Where exactly did we offend you, that you'd strike so ruthlessly?" "Offend me?" I acted as if I'd heard the biggest joke in the world. "Uncle Liu, you truly are a noble who forgets too much." I stood up, walked over to him, and looked down at him. "A year ago, your son Liu Xian and his dear cousin Liu Ying were having a secret rendezvous in the library pavilion when they perished in the fire. Your Liu family didn't pursue their scandalous affair that disgraced your family name, but instead questioned why I didn't sacrifice my life to save them. Does that count as an offense? Your son's body was barely cold when Madame Liu wanted me to marry in as a living widow, to work like a slave for your Liu family, draining every bit of my Yun family's value. Does that count as an offense? In my past life? Oh no. I mean, if I had really married over, how you would have treated me, you and I both know perfectly well. What you valued was never me, Yun Jixia, as a person, but my father's position as grand tutor, my Yun family's power. Your Liu family, from top to bottom, is rotten to the core, selfish, greedy, utterly shameless. What makes you think you can scheme against me, humiliate me, without paying any price? My voice grew colder and colder, each word like an ice pick, stabbing viciously into Patriarch Liu's heart. His face was ashen, cold sweat streaming down. Now I am taking away the wealth you cherish most bit by bit. Let you taste what it is like to fall from the clouds. I leaned close to his ear, and in a voice only the two of us could hear, I whispered, "Oh, right, I forgot to tell you. Back in that fire, I actually could have saved them, but I didn't. I just stood there, watching coldly as they were burned alive, listening to their desperate screams. In my heart, I felt so satisfied. Patriarch Liu suddenly raised his head, his eyes bloodshot, filled with endless hatred and fear. He wanted to lunge at me, but was firmly held down by the guards behind me. "You vicious woman." "Devil!" he roared hoarsely. "Thanks for the compliment." I straightened up, adjusted my sleeves, and resumed that calm and composed demeanor. "Uncle Liu, go back and tell Liu Ying. Doesn't she love the Liu family's wealth and status? Now, the Liu family has nothing left. I'd like to see how she continues living in luxury." With that, I left with my people, striding away proudly, leaving Patriarch Liu alone, in the restaurant that once belonged to him, completely broken. The news of the Liu family's bankruptcy spread through the entire capital like a gust of wind. Those friends and relatives who once fawned over the Liu family now avoided them like the plague. When the tree falls, the monkeys scatter. Such is the fickleness of the world. Liu Ying's situation, as one can imagine. Without the support of wealth and glory, her status in the Liu family plummeted. Her husband, Liu Xian, had always held a grudge against her, and now he vented all his resentment on her, beating and cursing her at the slightest provocation. Her mother-in-law, Madame Liu, also regarded her as a jinx, treating her with cold contempt all day long. They said she lived more miserably than even the lowest servants in the manor. Once, I happened to run into her on the street. She was carrying a vegetable basket, wearing old clothes washed so many times they'd turned pale, her hair dry and yellow, her face haggard. Long gone was the radiant beauty of her former days. Seeing me pass by in a magnificent carriage, surrounded by maids and servants, intense jealousy and resentment burst from her eyes. She wanted to rush up to me, but was stopped by my guards. I lifted the carriage curtain and gave her a pitying smile. "Sister Liu, how did you fall to such a state? Need me to spare you a few copper coins?" Her body trembled violently, her nails digging deep into her palms. I lowered the carriage curtain and instructed Ed the coachman. "Let's go." The carriage slowly passed by, leaving her desperate and venomous gaze far behind. Having dealt with the Liu family and Liu Ying, my gaze turned toward a higher place. The imperial palace. The crown prince's frail health was already common knowledge, and the princes, for that supreme position, fought openly and schemed in secret, the struggle growing ever fiercer. My father, as the grand tutor, teacher of emperors, and leader of the neutral faction, naturally became a target that all factions sought to win over. And I, as the grand tutor's only daughter, my marriage had also become an important bargaining chip in this political game. The third prince, the fifth prince, the seventh prince, almost all princes of suitable age had expressed their intentions for marriage alliance to my father, through various channels. In my past life, I was blinded by Lucian and turned a blind eye to all of this. This life, I see everything crystal clear. I didn't rush to make a choice. Instead, I secretly used Boss Shen's nationwide intelligence network to carefully observe and assess each prince. The third prince seemed refined and elegant, but was actually petty and vindictive. The fifth prince was exceptionally brave, but simple-minded, all brawn and no brains. In the end, my gaze fell upon the most inconspicuous one, the ninth prince, Merongheng. His mother had died early, his maternal family had no power, and he was cautious and careful in the palace, never participating in any factional struggles, like an invisible man. Everyone thought he had no chance at the throne. But I knew he wasn't. Through Boss Shen's intelligence network, I uncovered some unknown matters. For example, he secretly recruited refugees outside the city, reclaimed wasteland for farming, and built his own power base. For example, he had very close personal relationships with several generals at the border. Another example, on the surface, he seemed completely clueless about court politics. Yet he often hit the nail on the head, pointing out oversights in my father's policies. Of course, through anonymous letters. This was a man who knew how to hide his brilliance, with profound depths in his heart. What he lacked was just an opportunity to step onto the stage. And I could give him that opportunity. I chose him. On a spring day when hundreds of flowers were in bloom, using the chance to offer incense at the royal temple, I coincidentally encountered the ninth prince who was also meditating there. He wore a cyan robe washed so often it had turned pale, with clear features and a calm demeanor, sitting under a Bodhi tree, intently reading a Buddhist scripture. Sunlight filtered through the gaps between the leaves, casting dappled shadows on him, giving him an ethereal, otherworldly presence. I walked over and curtsied to him. This humble subject Yunjixia greets the Ninth Highness. He looked up, saw me, and a flicker of surprise crossed his eyes, but he quickly regained his composure. Miss Yun, no need for such formalities. Between us there wasn't much small talk. I directly stated my purpose. Your Highness, do you want to become emperor? My question was earth-shattering. The Buddhist scripture in his hand fell to the ground with a thud. He abruptly stood up, looking at me warily, a flash of killing intent passing through his eyes. Miss Yun, watch your words. Your Highness need not be nervous. I continued smiling, calm and composed. Since I dared to ask this, I naturally came with sincerity. My father is the Grand Tutor of the current dynasty. Under my command is the largest trading company in Jiangnan. Money, people, power, I can give you all of it. I have only one condition. What condition? His voice was somewhat hoarse. I want to be the Empress. He fell silent. After a long while, he looked at me deeply, that gaze as if wanting to pierce through my flesh and see into the depths of my soul. Why choose me? Because your Highness is worth it. I met his gaze. Also because we are the same kind of people. To achieve our goals, we'll stop at nothing. He suddenly laughed. It was a laugh of relief, yet tinged with a hint of admiration. Fine. He said only one word. Our alliance was thus formed. Everything that followed fell into place naturally. Under my persuasion, my father began to quietly pave the way for the ninth prince in the imperial court. I, on the other hand, used my vast wealth to recruit soldiers and horses for him and win people's hearts. After the crown prince died of illness, the struggle among the princes reached a fever pitch. The third prince and the fifth prince fought until both were ruined. One was deposed for treason, the other imprisoned for corruption. And the ninth prince Merongheng, who had always been aloof from worldly strife, was naturally established as the new crown prince with the support of my father and a group of court officials. The following year, the old emperor passed away, and Merongheng ascended the throne, becoming the new emperor. And I, as I had wished, put on the phoenix robe, wore the phoenix crown, and became the most noble woman in all of Great Zhou. On the day of my coronation as empress, I stood atop Kungxian Gate, looking down at the civil and military officials kneeling below, their voices resounding with cries of "Long live the emperor." Among the crowd, I spotted a figure both familiar and unfamiliar. It was Lucian. I don't know what method he used, but he had somehow blended into the crowd, watching me from afar. His face was a tangled mix of regret, jealousy, unwillingness, and fear, his expression complicated to the extreme. And behind him, I seemed to see Yunjixia from my past life, humble and weak, having wasted her entire life on a hopeless love. Slowly, I curved the corners of my lips. Lu Xian, Liu Ying, the Lu family. Everyone who had ever hurt me had received the retribution they deserved, and I had finally broken free from the shackles of my past life, standing at the very pinnacle of power. The new emperor Morongheng walked to my side and took my hand. His palm was warm and strong. "What are you looking at?" he asked. "Looking at someone from the past," I said softly. He followed my gaze and immediately understood something. He didn't ask more questions, just held my hand a little tighter. "Jixia," he looked into my eyes and said earnestly, "This world, I share it with you." I smiled. "Yes, this world. It is ours to share." The fire of my past life burned away my beauty, and also burned away all my innocence and love. The fire of rebirth, however, ignited my ambition and desire, letting me rise from the ashes reborn. My life has only just begun. This magnificent vast land will be my most splendid stage.